It's NFL Week 15 here with myself, Cris, and Ron. How's it going, Ron?
Pretty good. If I would turn my device on, I could hear you better, but that's just a small thing.
I gave you the winning lottery numbers. I'm not going to repeat myself.
Okay, 17, 24, 52, 105.
Oh, boy. So, the comedy of how we go walk up and turn on the computer and we're live and we haven't said a word to each other.
Yeah.
Please take the lead here and tell me what's going on.
Okay. Well, I wasn't very active on Twitter on Saturday and Sunday because I was all over the place. So I didn't watch a lot of games. Didn't affect the fact that I had made all these plays. But the autopsy is just crazy this week, Cris. And I kind of wanted to have like a game show format to start this off. Like, was I lucky or did I have some deserved wins? I've mostly avoided lucky wins and unlucky losses this year. There's been a lot of craziness, as we know, and late game heroics, but most of my games haven't been touching that. But this week, it seemed like a lot of my games came down to the wire. So I wanted to get your thoughts and anybody else's thoughts who listen to this either live or you could leave comments on the YouTube page and then we'll respond afterwards. Was I lucky? Or did I have deserved wins? What's the story?
I think I have no problem at all doing that one.
So, ignoring Thursday, which was a small victory, the first one I want to point out is that I had Cleveland against the Jags. And we talked about that last Tuesday and Friday's Inside Blitz, that Cleveland was the right side in that game. But in looking at the box score and reading the comments and so on, Jacksonville worked their way back in the game and went for two when they were down 4 points. And had they converted on that 2-point conversion, all plays at -2.5 or -3 would have lost. I think I had the right side, but as judge and jury on this, what do you think? What does Birdie think? Was Cleveland the right side or was it just kind of a lucky win?
It is a undeserved win. But obviously people are upset that they did that. I mean, it brutalized several people that I know, and I'm just shocked I wasn't on the Jaguars. Betting wise, straight up, I had them in teasers, but we're going to find out that going for two down 4 is going to become more common down the road. And the reason being is you're basically going into overtime anyway. So this is the strategy with just, a little time remaining. You want to know what you need to do. So why do you want to put yourself in a position to get lucky or not control your result again in overtime? So basically, if you put yourself in a position of knowing whether you need a field goal or a touchdown right away, well, then that's what you do, because otherwise you're kicking a field goal and you can lose to a coin toss. So don't forget that. You may never see the ball again. So at least this way, in that situation, there wasn't enough time left. But if you get a chance to at least touch the ball and put it in when you have a chance, that's better than going to overtime and maybe you don't even get the ball again.
Yeah, a perfect example was last night when Tennessee down 27-13, scored the touchdown and went for two, so they knew exactly what they needed to do.
Yeah,
that's the more clean-cut example. To
it's
use
true.
The word clean-cut describing Chris's hair as well, so it's kind of a double move there. I personally think Cleveland was the right side with the home road splits and everything we talked about last week, but they made it treacherous there. But I understand if it was a 50-50 coin flip at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, overall, they outplayed them for sure. So it goes back to there are too many games where you can have a discussion like this and your handicap didn't matter. And that's the problem with, some of the handicaps. And that's why I've changed my betting strategy a little bit. So it's frustrating.
Good point by Buster there in terms of Lawrence. I wasn't surprised they got down early. I was surprised that Lawrence was even playing. And I think that hurt the Jags more than helped them at the beginning.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
So the next one I astutely took Baltimore in the first half and paid a little juice to get it down to -3. I was more comfortable there. Baltimore led 14-10 and gave up a touchdown to the Rams, and I lost the first half.
I saw that.
In my view, it was a deserved loss. But since I didn't see the game, I'm just reading the box score analysis. Curious what other people thought. Did Baltimore do anything to warrant covering the first half, or was it just one of those situations where the Rams deserved the first half win?
I watched that when it did go to the half, and I was just kind of disgusted. It just seemed like the Rams wanted it more, and Baltimore was just flat. You kind of knew it was coming for some reason.
Yeah, I in the box score analysis, I felt like, okay, I had the lead 14-10, but they didn't do anything to protect that lead.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that as a deserved loss. Probably skip over Chicago, Detroit. I had Chicago when the line went back to 3.5. I don't think there was any problem in terms of who was the better team on that day, even though I understand that Detroit did take the first half lead in that game, but then something happened in the second half.
There's serious problems there in Detroit, and I mentioned it before. The Bears' defense is playing so well, and there's obviously serious problems with Detroit on both sides of the ball now. You know what? The Bears were a solid pick.
Game I played late because I just looked more at the matchup analysis was Tampa +2 against Atlanta. I don't know. The lead changed hands so many times according to the box score that I don't know who was supposed to win or not supposed to win. To me, if I had to handicap that game now, it was a complete toss-up. Was there anything that you saw, Cris, or anybody else saw in the Tampa-Atlanta game that suggested that one team was better than the other?
Well, I've got to I absolutely 100% fully expected this exact coin flip result. I mentioned it. I go, you got to be out of your mind to bet either of these teams straight up when you have a teaser available. And that was the case. From what I understand, I was listening to another show, and somebody was mentioning that it was very deceptive that Tampa Bay really had some poor play and were fortunate to be where they ended up. So I will actually trust what I heard out of the corner of my ear that possibly Tampa Bay was the more fortunate team in this situation.
If I would have had to do it all over again, I would have either reduced my Tampa play or not played at all, because I think I would have kicked myself and said, wow, they lost by 3. And I said that I really would prefer 3 points in this game. But I kind of really liked their road chances in the game. But I don't think that was a deserved win necessarily. I took Minnesota -3 against Las Vegas. There were some technical and situational factors that really favored Minnesota. I'm not a big fan of laying favorites. I did have them in one moneyline parlay that did win. Talk about that later. But they won 3-0. So I don't know what happened in that game. Minnesota replaced Dobbs. He ran 5 for 21 according to the box score, but he did nothing through the air. we talked about his legs are his best asset. You talked about Mullins probably being a better option anyway. Jefferson came back and apparently didn't play the second half. Vegas didn't do anything offensively. What exactly was the right side in this game, if anything?
I'm sorry, I got distracted. On which game?
Minnesota plus 3,
Oh, yeah.
a -3. What exactly was the right side?
That was a huge game for me. I really started off poorly in the early games and absolutely had to have that game. And I did not play the -3. So I was safe if Minnesota lost by 3 or just won the game. But the whole dynamic of that game changed when they changed quarterbacks. That was a good move. They probably should have done it earlier. If you only score 3 points, you don't deserve to win. If you only give up 0, you deserve to win. So I only really paid. It just seemed like neither of these teams could do anything. It was just. It depends. See, for me, I thought that they would have fared much better offensively. So I feel that my handicap was a failure, if that answers your question. It depends on how you expected them to win that game.
I think my takeaway from the game, brainstorming it right now, is that under their interim coach, Vegas is playing much more inspired defensively because that's his background. That's where he gets the most buy-in because he's done that. The Raiders are playing better defensively, but they didn't score a point, and I end up pushing on the game. I just feel like I must have fallen into another coin flip game. I expected a little bit more from Minnesota, especially situationally in that spot. One more to point out, and obviously this was a biggie, if you believe in offsides penalties or not offsides penalties, but I had Buffalo against Kansas City. We talked about it so many times about the extremely unfair rest differential that Kansas City is going through. Cris, you and I talked about that before the season. When was the right time to pull the trigger on Kansas City under for season wins? I did it when we were together when Kansas City was 12. I wanted to withhold judgment. I figured they'd start fast and then I'd get a 12.5 or something like that, which I did mid-season. So everything's going well with that. Yet at the same time, Kansas City almost won the game. I kind of feel like Buffalo was the right side, but Buffalo is not a great team defensively. Any thoughts, Autopsy, on that game?
Well, that's 2 games in a row that Kansas City basically has had taken from them, potentially. Let's not forget the way that Green Bay game ended. So
right.
Some frustration there. But, there is Buffalo played well. I was really, really busy at the time. It was a very, very bizarre day for me. And it seemed like Josh Allen was making more dumb decisions again. And basically that's a big problem. So the Kansas City woes in the fourth quarter are getting just ridiculous. They're averaging 3 points a game in the fourth quarter. So, and Buffalo's letting them back in. So I think Kansas City was even, lucky to even be where they were, frankly, but Buffalo was the deserved pick.
Yeah, I kind of go with all of that. I'm concerned about Josh Allen, as we have been. Second in the league, third in the league or something when touchdown passes, but tied for last in terms of number of interceptions he's thrown this year. It's needless. I mean, why is he throwing caution to the winds when he has a good running back in Cook? He has a tight end that he really values in Kincaid. He's got Diggs. He's got Davis deep. They're a decent enough offensive line, a very good split in terms of the sack ratio. They made the Kansas City game, it seems, tougher than it should have been.
I do. You remind me, I did hear an announcer state in a pretty stern way that Allen was making some foolish choices and mentioning, you've got to know better at this point. And I do recall that in a manner that you don't usually hear the announcers say something about a superstar.
So one more thing. It turned out to be a really good week. I have one regret for the week. And, we always look back and say, what should I have done or whatever. It was a really good spot for Dallas. And I never officially pulled the trigger and made a play on. I made one play as part of a parlay, Dallas at Pick'em. But to be honest, I really should have had Dallas straight. And for whatever reason, I ended up not even distracted or whatever I did or whatever. I never pulled the trigger on that play. And that's my one regret.
I laid the 3.5 in contests, and I was very confident that Dallas was going to cover the 3.5. It was a disappointment to me that they completely annihilated Philly, though I thought, and they shouldn't have. Frankly, that game should have been a lot closer. As bad as Philadelphia looked, how many dropped balls, how many ridiculous turnovers. It was unbelievable. They moved up and down the field on Dallas. And, it was not that bad of a game. Philadelphia very well should have been in that game. They just weren't. And as you mentioned, it was the situation. When you had the metrics and the strength of the team, the home field, the revenge, all this situation on top of each other, Dallas was a solid play.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that I missed it. Turning it around a little bit there, any autopsy you have from your games this past week, or any regrets you have that you want to put out there, or you want me to comment on?
The last 2 days have been by far, not even remotely close, the most stressful, most ridiculous, most asinine days ever for me in betting. It's just, I'm not going to go into it because that's not what the show's about, but the chaos that this week has created for me was, it gets you to the point of, by coincidence, last week, we're talking about the mental aspects of betting and self-awareness and maintaining composure. And I'm, in one respect, I'm happy that I maintained composure under absolute ridiculous circumstances. And I think, and it shocked me. I remember thinking to myself, boy, you're cool as a cucumber. And boy, are you, is this a shitstorm you're in? And so that's a good thing. The bad thing is I just, I do not, I feel good going in, and there's just something off about my process has been, put askew. I think that's the issue with me is pivoting and adapting and, concern for people that follow me and not disappointing them. I'm becoming very self-aware and reflective of, hey, you've got to stick to what works. Don't be distracted. So for me, it's been a very process-related evaluation over the last couple of days. I can't get upset about what I bet and what I'm steered to. This season is having results that are extremely atypical of the previous 20 years. I don't remember the exact numbers, but dogs are running double-digit negative ROI this season. That's in home dog. Maybe it's just home dogs are, but dogs in general are a negative ROI. So, that's going to be an issue. We know scoring's askew. We know how many new quarterbacks there are. There's just so many unusual variables this year. That's okay. I can kind of deal with it. It's frustrating, but it's hard not to be frustrated.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought all this up because it's so important to be self-aware of what's going on in terms of the process, always looking at the process. And when we get to the time of the year, mid-December, where there's mental fatigue involved in handicapping these games, at least for me, I feel it when it's the end of December, because I've been working on this July and August, every single game, every single team. And by the time it gets to December, even though the process has been repeatable for years and years and years, there is mental fatigue going on. And there's always going to be an off-season autopsy. How did I do this? How did I go about this? Has anything changed? For me, navigating through and having a really fine season after an awkward first 3 weeks, I'm pleased about that. But I will say this, in terms of strangeness of this year, I have never, ever seen a year where the drop-off in quarterback play has been this pronounced. And it has affected how I adjust power ratings for injured quarterbacks. And that's an area, it's just so treacherous to figure out why Tim Boyle is playing quarterback. What's up with DeVito playing quarterback for the New York Giants? What happens if Beathard plays for Trevor Lawrence? What happens if Trevor Lawrence plays, but he's not even close to 100%? Now Justin Herbert's going to be out the rest of the year. I think the year in quarterback and the drop off between the top 12 quarterbacks and everybody else has really made it a challenge to do power ratings.
There's just no doubt about it. I mean, the thing that I remember the most vividly is that every one of my teams this week seemed to be missing chip shot field goals, extra points. The kicking game was killing me for a period of time. I was just laughing at it. I go, this is just ridiculous. He's gonna miss it. It's like, how do you miss 29-yard field goals by a mile? It's like, but the variance is not an excuse for losing. Because or winning, it's going to go both ways. But just the absurdity of these finishes and the performance ups and downs are inexplicable. I mean, how does a absolutely useless quarterback all of a sudden come out looking like a Pro Bowler? You've got people from week to week that are just way up, way down in performance. Teams way up, way down in performance for, like Philadelphia not playing well, perfectly understandable. That was the spot. But you've got other situations where teams are like, are you kidding me? Pittsburgh, that's the best you had in you after coming off a loss. There were a lot of those situations, just bizarre. Tennessee, come on, you're down 14 with less than 3 minutes, you win, and you knew the Giant. I mean, the back and forth on the Giants Green Bay yesterday was just come on, and it just looks so Hollywood scriptish, and the horrible refereeing again, and the indecisiveness. And when you compound what you mentioned with the quarterbacks and everything else, it's sensory overload. It really is.
So we move on to week 15, and we have at it again with 16 games, 3 on Saturday and so on. And as we go through this, I think I tweeted this out and I texted you on this. I always set my numbers before I look at the Vegas numbers. It's very important for me to have what I think the numbers should be and where my power ratings are. And then I look, and if there's an adjustment to be made, I determine whether or not it's me being confident in my number or me missing something. Because obviously, the people who set lines know what they're doing in most cases. We don't have to bet every game, so we can find places that we really like things. But there's always going to be something that I look and say, wow, I'm off by this number. I understand it. I can't play my number. But when I set the totals for this week, and I don't play a lot of totals, but I set them because I want to get the game rhythm going anyway. I think I was off by 2.5 points or more in 8 of the games in setting the totals. And Cris, you and I haven't talked online or offline that much about totals. So I thought it would be interesting to go over some of the totals this week, even though I don't think you're that much of a totals player either. And
Well, how do you come up with your totals? Is there something you can share on that process?
I come up with it based on points for, points against per team. I come up with it based on how a team matches up. Is a team going to take away somebody's run, take away the pass? I come up with it based on cluster injuries, either to the secondary or to the offensive line, because those are areas that impact scoring one way or another. And then I come up with it with situational factors, third game on the road, playing on a short week, rest disadvantage, a lot, and unfortunately, quarterback play, where they are in the quarterback rotation. So there's 5 or 6 things I consider. I do not consider weather when I initially make my totals. I figure that will adjust itself later on when I look at weather reports. So I do my totals void of weather, but I'm aware of them. So I understand when my line is off because of weather. But this week, my line is off not just because of weather.
But I'm going to guess, I'm not even sure you average betting more than one total a week, do you?
The totals that I bet, I tend to bet totals more week 1 and week 18 than anything else because I have tremendous situations there. And there are occasional weeks 2, 3, and 4 totals that come up. Between week 5 and week 17, that's 12 or 13 weeks, I don't even know if I bet one total a week. It's very, very close in that matter. I have to have a real edge for that. You're right about that. But I'm just concerned this week that I'm so far off.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious that you're spending so much time on the totals and you really don't utilize that effort that you put in. I would imagine that you probably do it because it also is a catch gap to match your point spread handicap also, because the combination of the two gives you a better picture of what to expect for you.
I think you're right on both counts. Am I spending a little too much time on it? What am I gaining from putting out over-under totals and stuff like that? It's just an understanding of where I'm off and why I'm off, because it also kind of affects player props. I like to play a whole mess of under player props when the totals are 37, 38, 35, 33, because these guys are not going to get to the window. If there's a total of 33, how are they? They're not going to have 450 total yards in the game. So you're looking for some players that are mispriced when there are low totals. And I'm also looking to back off player props when there are high totals, because I tend to be contrarian anyway and play more unders than overs in player totals. But I think that it's an indication of quarterback play, the way some of the totals are being played. And it's an indication of defenses catching up to offenses in terms of preventing big plays. Kansas City, for example, they're averaging under 23 points per game, somewhere in that area. Who would have ever thought a Patrick Mahomes team would be averaging so low? And you can't blame it all on wide receiver drops, because they have a really, really, really good offensive line, and they have one of the best tight ends in the business in Travis Kelce. So they should be scoring more points than that, but teams are forcing Mahomes to run the ball more than pass the ball downfield.
What games did you were you bizarrely off with?
Okay, let's start with because some of them ones I'm off because Vegas game with the Chargers, there's no reason to discuss that point total with the new quarterback and all that. But Minnesota and Cincinnati, I was off. I was higher than the posted total by 2.5 points. I thought Jake, in my opinion, and this is good for me to get this out loud. In my opinion, Jake Browning is not a detriment to the scoring offense because he's a confident thrower and they're comfortable running the offense with him. So I do not quite understand why the total should be under 40.
Well, Minnesota's not scoring, number one, and their defense has been pretty decent. And I think that's the perspective on this one.
Yeah, I see their total points as being under 40, about 38 per game. So I understand that. We just come off a game where they shut out an opponent, but they're still not that strong against the pass. They have a decent pass rush. They're really playing well against the run, forcing teams to pass. But I think with Chase and Higgins and Boyd, if you're Cincinnati, you don't mind passing the ball. It was just a reflection. I was off on that particular line, trying to justify it. Next one, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. So I set this one based on Pittsburgh as being under a 40 total, and then it comes out around 42 when it first is out there. So I was off about 4 points on the Pittsburgh, Indianapolis total.
But you have, I'm not sure Watt's going to play, and one of the other. Who's the second best defensive guy? I think they quite likely are missing two of their best players.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that helps me in explaining why. I would certainly understand that if Watt doesn't play, forget it.
Yeah.
Next one I was off on, Atlanta, Carolina. Not that I ever thought that would be a high-scoring game, but 35.5 was about 3 points lower than I actually set it, to be honest.
Well, I just think Carolina's offense is considered completely inept, and but their defense is not complete garbage. New Orleans got very lucky to get some margin with Carolina, frankly.
Yeah, I think Carolina. What was Bryce Young? 14 of 36 or something. It was just a horrendous output by Bryce Young. Something's going terribly wrong in Carolina games this particular year with their offense. I guess Atlanta's defense 21 per game, roughly in that area. Carolina's at home. If you think Carolina can score at home against Atlanta and score 20 points, and Atlanta's favored by 3, you could make a case that the over-under should be in the low 40s. I personally set it at 40, and I'm too high.
Yeah, I think that is too high.
Yeah.
I mean, how is Carolina going to get it in a shootout with them?
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting one. And the last one that I think is worth mentioning right now, but I don't know if it is CJ Stroud is in concussion protocol. So all over-unders are off if he's not in the game.
The weather's supposed to be dicey.
In Tennessee?
Chance of rain and high winds projected in the Atlanta game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I just couldn't understand a 35.5 set. Carolina in general wouldn't be, I wouldn't have guessed that would be a bad weather game. And the Houston one, the only other one I would, worthy of mention right now. If Stroud is cleared, I don't understand, even with Tennessee's. I think Tennessee and Will Levis adds more variance to the overs. They're more willing to pass with him than Tannehill. Levis has a little bit of gunslinger mentality. I equate Levis to Josh Allen in terms of his willingness to take chances, partly because he's a rookie and he doesn't see the field that well anyway. He also has a dynamite rocket arm, so they could throw deep on him. To be honest, if Stroud plays, I'm really surprised the line is 37.5 in the total in the Houston, Tennessee game.
I believe that they lost one other key person last week that is unlikely to play. I have not done my due diligence on that game, but I think it's more than Stroud.
Okay. I'll take a look, but it's just an interesting concept, and I may dabble a little bit more in over-unders this week once I do a second go around and see which numbers I want to trust for me and which numbers I'm not willing to trust, I may dabble in some of these over-unders to see if my matchup analysis is better than what the lines have been set.
Nico Collins also hurt.
Okay. Well, that's a big one because what did he have? About 140, 190 the week before, and then he had one catch last week before going out. So, yeah, injuries all over the place, not just quarterbacks.
Mills would be a significant downgrade also.
I agree completely. Mills from Stanford. He's had a chance. He was rushed into action when he played for two different coaches. Remember, Houston has had a coaching carousel. It's a revolving door in terms of 4 coaches or 5 coaches in 4 or 5 years. So now they have stability at head coach. But Mills is more of the check down variety. They would have to change their offense a little bit. I think he'd be less turnover prone unless he was rusty. But I believe that the over-under would be warranted if Mills had to play instead of Stroud.
Anderson tweaked his ankle as well. Mr. Helper said.
Birdie. Okay. Anderson, that's the defensive player because that's the high draft choice, Anderson. So that would actually impact scoring the other way.
I know Richard Anderson was Oscar Goldman. That's about it.
That'll be good enough for me. What observations do you have in terms of these games, week 15?
You know what? I was so nauseated from last week that when I looked at week 15, Sunday afternoon or early Sunday evening, I took a look up and down and, well, there's problems here. There's problems there. There's problems here. I thought to myself, this is the worst possible schedule I could imagine. It just looks like complete garbage. And I can't imagine having anything that's going to interest me other than maybe one game.
Wow.
But I guess I'm coming around on it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to give it time to percolate, especially if you want to treat this week as if you want to, in some ways, forget about what plays you made last week, and in some ways remember it and see where you could have strayed differently. But you have to treat each week as a separate entity.
Sorry, I was trying to get rid of that person. So that's the first time we've had that.
Yeah. Hey, we have a bot show up. So interesting game to me would be Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. Speaking of that particular game, what's your initial thoughts on that game?
My initial thoughts are to refresh my memory on what the divisional outlooks are at this point. Indianapolis 7-6, Pittsburgh 7-6. Let me pull up the AFC playoff picture here.
It's a long playoff picture.
I got to figure out how to do this again. Okay, it's there, right? Can you see that?
I can see it.
Boy, they're both in the playoffs technically.
Yeah, it's a situation to me where the loser is in big trouble because if they ended up tied, obviously the tiebreaker would be head to head. And so this is an enormously important game. Pittsburgh
absolutely has to have it because they play at Baltimore, at Seattle, and Cincinnati after this week. So I did happen to notice that their odds to make the playoffs were much higher than I thought that they would be. And that makes sense.
Pittsburgh, 2 weeks ago, Pittsburgh was looking playoff bound without any problem, but losing to Arizona and then losing last week really hurt them.
Indianapolis could survive without this win. It's not going to be a pleasant route, but look at Denver's breathing down their neck. Denver can win out technically.
And Buffalo with the win this week. Buffalo and Denver have elevated their status. The whole world turned around in the AFC in the last couple of weeks. So now you have Denver and Buffalo, two teams that were probably around 10th and 11th in the standings not long ago. And they're the hottest team, or Denver's the hottest team.
They are. The Lions got all the love. They're playing their third straight road game. So as you would imagine, there's a very ugly trend betting with a team in that situation. And especially with Detroit reeling, it really makes it a very interesting game in prime time on Saturday night, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Is that one Saturday night? Yeah. I mean, the schedule's all over the place. I haven't. Prime time Saturday night. What I'd like to see out of the Lions is more of a pass rush. It's been dormant.
And it's getting worse. Some of the stupidity that they had in certain situations it's just astounding. And I've been saying it for a couple of weeks that, hey, they're going to get their act together here. I got a bad feeling. I don't know. I mean, a part of my mind wandered off this morning as somebody was discussing the team, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, well, because they've only used St. Brown. I think he has 3 receptions in 2 games. And I started to think to myself, well, maybe they're trying different things while they have this divisional gap and they know they can't get the number 1. And maybe they want to involve different schemes and different players. But Jameson Williams has had more than 1 catch in a game once this entire season. So, Hutchinson created a really dumb penalty that gave life to the Bears. He's not getting sacks. They're not getting the pressure. As you said, something's got to change. And what about Russell's mobility? I think Russell's mobility is going to be, challenging for Detroit, just like it was with Fields.
Yeah, but there's good and bad Russell when he's under pressure. I mean, the guy gets sacked a lot, and Sean Payton is trying to get him out of that rhythm, but Denver has allowed, 38 sacks for the season. So that's the area that you want to frustrate him, because Russell Wilson holds on to the ball too long. And it's up to Detroit to put pressure on him, because if they do not, then Sean Payton is going to scheme this game in such a way that Denver's going to score points on the Lions based on Lions' recent history. Last 5 games giving up 30 points per game, not to any team with a winning record. So I think this is all about Russell Wilson. And does Detroit dictate how Russell Wilson plays, or does Sean Payton dictate how Russell Wilson plays?
I believe that this game goes as Goff and the offense goes, because I believe Peyton's going to be able to. They've turned Wilson into a washed up, has-been disaster into a situation of which team would you look at the situations coming into this season after like week 3. And now I ask you, which team would you rather have? Peyton and Wilson and the Denver to root for going forward, or Carroll and Seattle going forward? Which team do you trust has a better future at this point?
Seattle.
You think so?
Back to back. They haven't solved their quarterback issue, but Russell Wilson is older as well. And again, there are flaws to his game, even though Peyton, yeah, I mean, you're right. We all knew that Peyton could help fix Russell Wilson. But the long-term prognosis is that Seattle is going to be a really tough secondary again, with 3 high-powered draft choices recently, 2 really good running backs, 3 really good wide receivers. They've drafted 4 offensive linemen. I really do like the future of Seattle. I don't know, maybe they make a big play for Kirk Cousins, or maybe they get some other veteran quarterback to guide this team if they're not comfortable with Geno Smith, or maybe they stick with Geno Smith. I just think the youngsters have to mature. If you're asking me this year, Seattle's in some trouble. They have a must win this week. If you're asking me for the future, Seattle's got the better future.
Well, they're carrying that contract on Smith, and there's he's not going to carry that team.
Yeah, I mean, you have these guys, middle of the road guys like Ryan Tannehill, like Jimmy Garoppolo, guys like that. You can put Daniel Jones in that with his new contract. These guys have a ceiling.
Let's take a look at this NFC picture. So the Packers, I don't think there's any doubt that there's just been something wrong with that Seattle that's above and beyond. It just it's unexplainable. There's more issues kind of hidden. Sort of like what I was saying with Cincinnati, where it's not just what you're seeing with your eyes, because their metrics were caving even before these last. They've actually been playing better lately, though. I mean, they
played toe-to-toe with Dallas. They played relatively decently against San Francisco. So they're a team that's obviously competitive against the top teams and occasionally pull an upset. But they're too young to completely be trusted in certain games, and the Ram game was a killer for them.
This playoff picture is awfully interesting. Tampa's in the playoffs at the moment. Boy, their pathway is the most difficult. Well, I don't know.
There's a comment on Coach of the Year before I forget it. Sorry to distract the topic there, but this thing is wide open for Coach of the Year because it changes from week to week. What if Houston goes in a little tailspin and DeMeco Ryans' stock goes down a little bit? What if San Francisco runs the table? Then Shanahan is in a really good spot. Even the McCarthy's getting better. I think it's a too close to call race right now, Coach of the Year, because you got. I mean, look at the league with San Francisco with 5 losses, with Buffalo with 6 losses. All the teams that were favorites at the beginning of the year. It's one of these years when it just changes from week to week. And the very thing you're doing with the AFC playoff picture and the NFC playoff picture right now, it's a toss-up as to who gets into the playoffs. Minnesota has 2 games left against Detroit that it's going to determine their fate.
There's one thing I do know about this Coach of the Year market, though, is Dan Campbell does not belong being the favorite.
No, I think that's out now.
And let's see if he still is. He is still the favorite, tied with DeMeco Ryans. Campbell does not belong that high.
No. I mean, not taking away from their season because it's still a playoff season. But there are other coaches right now that are performing at a higher level.
Shanahan's third, followed by Steichen. No, followed by, I'm sorry, McDaniel is third, Shanahan, and then Steichen.
Well, McDaniel may see his stock drop a little off Monday. That's why it's week to week with this award.
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but what do you think the odds a non-quarterback can win the MVP?
Probably slim, because in the case of Tyreek Hill, I mean, he's a legitimate MVP candidate, but Tua and Tyreek Hill might cancel each other out in votes. And McCaffrey, who would be my pick for MVP, certainly Purdy would cancel out McCaffrey votes. I'd probably say Purdy would be the slight favorite right now, even with McCaffrey there. But I think it's way too hard for a non-quarterback to win the award.
Well, I think Prescott either wins it or loses it based on, the strength of schedule they have remaining.
That good point.
If he does well, then I think it's his at this point.
I like that. I like that because he doesn't have another player on the team to siphon pick votes away.
Yeah, I just think I'm not gonna say he deserves it now if the season ended now. All I know is that he's right there at that level where if he does well, I can't see anybody else getting it, and if he doesn't do well, then he played himself out of it. So it's all in his hands at this point. Whereas I think
I agree. And
the only other person, I put out Josh Allen as a possible and got ridiculed because he has 15 interceptions. But if they run the table and they win out and he's in the playoffs, he certainly will be in that conversation. Whether he wins it or not, I don't know. But he won't be summarily dismissed as a consideration.
The other person that I think is going to get prime consideration, especially if they're the number one seed, will be Lamar Jackson.
You know what? I don't think he's making wise choices. He's throwing a lot of errant balls. He's doing stuff that not at the level he was doing at the beginning of the year. I just feel like it's not that he can't step it up and actually get in that position, but he definitely has to step it up because he's coasting at a lower level, in my opinion.
He's got some tough games left, too, that'll help decide his fate. But I think we've cornered the market on who the contenders are for that. So I just want
to say I just have a real problem with Purdy. Let me ask you this. If you put McCaffrey and the Bears with Fields, do you agree that the Bears would be a pretty darn good team at this point?
They would be better because they would have probably better time of possession because McCaffrey could do so many things, including block. So they would certainly be better. And the Bears, once they got healthier on defense, then the defense can help shoulder the load in that area. Anything to take the pressure off Justin Fields is a good thing.
Yeah, but if you put Purdy on the Bears, are the Bears any better? Slightly?
If you put Purdy, it's a different offense. They'd have to adjust. And that offensive line is nowhere near what San Francisco's offensive line is. It would be a problem.
If you take Christian McCaffrey away from San Francisco, what happens to San Francisco?
They're not feared as much. They don't convert as many third downs, but they still have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and so on.
If you're
making an argument that I've made for years.
But if you take Purdy out of the lineup and put him in Chicago and put Fields in there, even you don't think that Shanahan would coach him up and put him in a situation to actually keep that team, somewhat going with the supporting cast?
I think they would be good, but I think they would be flawed. I don't think Shanahan and Fields are a perfect match.
But San Francisco would not drop through the floorboards like they would if they don't have McCaffrey in the lineup. I mean, not that they dropped through the floorboards, but when he was out, they lost every game.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. But, I mean, you're talking about other players being out at the same time. Trent Williams was out and so on. So you have a situation where when Mahomes went to Kansas City, when Josh Allen went to Buffalo and they built up the offensive line, when Lamar Jackson dropped to number 32 and went to Baltimore, these guys were all gifted by going with teams with great tight ends and great offensive lines. It's the unrealized story about the Sam Darnolds of the world and the Zach Wilsons of the world. We'll never know if they would be good. They have so many bad habits now, but when you're drafted by a bad team, you're behind the 8 ball.
Cleveland Browns, where do you have them rated?
As an average team. They've really disappointed me defensively recently. Offensively, they don't have the same running rhythm that they had when they had Nick Chubb back there. Wide receiver plays a little bit erratic. Quarterback play, they're getting as much as they can out of the old guy now. So they're playing rotating. I just have them as an average team. Where do you have them?
I was just surprised to see somebody had them rated 7th, and I thought, 7th? How do you get to 7th?
I have them in a cluster with a whole bunch of other teams right in the middle of the pack.
Oh,
it's like 9 teams within a half a point of each other. 7. Yeah, exactly 9 teams.
I don't know why I can't find my downloads here. Oh, well. Yeah, I can't pull up my list right now.
Yeah, it's really close there. You'd be splitting hairs to say that they would be 13th or 21st. I mean, it's that close in the middle of my rankings.
I'm just quickly looking. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. You have them 3rd. Oh.
No, I don't. But I have. There's a cluster of teams that are all at the exact same number, that are all within 1 point of each other.
That's what I just said. Yeah, 9 teams within a half point of each other in that area.
I believe. Do you know how many teams can still make the playoffs? Quick,
20, 24.
More.
28.
I think it's 26.
Yeah. Realistic chances, there's probably still close to 20, though. Talk to me about the Rams. They suffered the loss to Baltimore, not entirely unexpected, but they almost won the game. Are the Rams playoff worthy? I have them higher than Cleveland.
Yeah, no, absolutely they are. That's a team that took a loss this week and their rating went up. Would you agree?
Yep. I mean, I have them in the top 10. I think I have them in the top 10 now for one of the first times.
I've got to pull up my list. It's
I think I have them 9th. Rams 9th. Can you believe it?
It really is something. It really is something. They've been doing very well. Let's see here. Okay, I have my list finally. No, I don't have them that high.
Okay.
Jesus. Huh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I see some big surprises here.
Okay.
How is Cleveland back to the number 1 defense again?
Well, they have an absolute tremendous defense versus the pass. In this day and age, for teams to complete just 56% against them is a wild stat. And it means that if Justin Fields is going to complete passes, you're going to see 5-yard pass completions this week.
I think Fields is going to have a little difficulty this week, isn't he?
Yeah,
Party's over for
his stat line is going to be something like, let's make something up now, 12 out of 26 for 190 yards with 2 long bombs. And he'll probably run for another 55 or so. So you're looking at a guy who complete. I think he'll complete maybe half his passes this week.
I think McVay should be considered if the Rams get in solidly. Absolutely. I mean, geez.
Yeah, especially if he would have, if the Rams would have pulled the upset against Baltimore, that would have elevated his status. Bertie and I have the Rams 9. Okay.
The Chargers the Chargers are still in it technically.
I've eliminated them.
Well, I mean, they are eliminated, but
yeah. Okay, so we have a Birdie at 9 for the Rams. Fact of the matter has the Rams 13. Basically, they are definitely in the top half of the ratings, though.
There we go. Yeah, the Browns lost a key offensive lineman. He's done.
Yeah, out for the year.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would hurt. That's why you want Joe Flacco in the lineup instead of Dorian Thompson-Robinson or anybody like that, because Flacco's been through this before. He can sense pressure a little bit more than a rookie quarterback. I think as offensive linemen get hurt, you want a veteran presence out there calling the plays and running the shots.
Yeah, McVay's 45 to 1 at Circa.
Give me your read on New Orleans after a 28-6 win over Carolina last week.
That's a team that won, and I'm not sure their stock didn't go down. Am I wrong?
I just kept them the same.
I
reward defensive performance. My power rating numbers reward defensive performance no matter who it's against. In this day and age, if you allow 6 points, if you allow single digits, you tend to get a little bit of a bump in my ratings.
Well, we did make that call last week saying that division was going to be tied up.
Yeah, you got that one. You nailed that one.
What do you think about Flacco? That's a good question.
I think Flacco brings some maturity to the position, and for Cleveland, that wasn't always even evident when Watson was back there. Watson did some things that I didn't like. Watson's internal clock slowed down tremendously in his return to football. It was just obvious. And Flacco has no mobility compared to Watson, yet he has a better internal clock.
Yeah, I think the leadership and experience and the just the demeanor helps them as a team. And
on the road. So they were on the road twice, or I guess the last 2 games. He's taken 3 sacks in 2 games, Flacco. So that's good.
I think but the Bears are going to put some pressure on him this week.
Bears had 4 sacks last week against the Lions. They must love to play the Lions because they only had 17 for the year. That's a surprising stat to me, the fact that they were able to get 4 sacks on Goff.
Well, we had the Ragnow was out, and they're just not playing well. And Goff is, I believe, his passer rating under pressure is like at 0. I mean, it's that bad. So I wasn't joking. I think it's at 0. It's abysmal. I mean, there's a lot of scary, bad things with the Lions right now. So
I want to mention one thing that I wrote in the article, the NFL article that's coming out or is out already today. I don't think you can underestimate what's going on with the New York Jets and their defense. I'd be interested where your numbers are right now with the Jets defense and where you are the last 5 weeks with the Jets defense.
I have them dead last for the entire year.
Offense or defense?
Defense.
Defense dead last, the Jets?
Hold on. I'm getting flustered here.
I would definitely do an autopsy on your methodology if you had the Jets dead last.
No, I said Giants.
Oh, Yeah, Giants. Yeah, Jets. Where are the Jets?
Oh, I thought you said Giants. I'm sorry.
Nope.
The Jets on defense or offense?
Yeah, defense. Last 5 weeks and season.
Oh, they're only they're like 8th or 9th the last 5 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I have the Jets in my top 5.
For the last 5 weeks or overall?
Last 5 weeks, I would have them roughly around third.
For the season, they're right at 6th.
Yeah, and I have them roughly tied for 4th, 5th. I mean,
Okay.
this is a team that, despite whatever's going on offensively, has really taken to start shutting down opponents defensively. Easily sub 60 pass D the last few weeks, stopping the run better than they had been, getting to the quarterback at a better than average levels. They just need, this is a team that is in dire need of an offensive line overhaul. But this is a team to keep an eye on next year. We're talking about this year, but the Jets are going to have a 4th place schedule next year. They're going to have Aaron Rodgers back. Give them some offensive linemen. Give them maybe one more wide receiver or tight end target. Don't lose anybody on defense. And I think the Jets are going to make a major move.
Well, we were at, I think 6 of the 8 last place teams won this week. That was kind of odd, but you brought up recently that our concern with the Jets was going to be the defensive motivation going forward based on how bad that offense is. At what point did they become disheartened and give up? And they've done the inverse. They've, improved.
There was a real chance that inserting Wilson back into the starting lineup at quarterback would cause a lot of infighting with the offense if Wilson took sacks or threw interceptions or did something bad. And he turned it around and he was able to go ahead and ignite the offense and rally the team and garner support that he didn't have before. He's been humbled by his experiences there. Again, it's not a good offensive line. So there are going to be times that he's not going to look very good. It's just the way it is. And he's not a great quarterback anyway. But the Jets are going to be trying. Their coach loves their defense. Their defense wants to shut out opponents, do whatever they can. They held Houston to 6 points. I think they have a chance to build something with one more fine draft.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. Do you credit the Jets' performance more to their effort or the failures of Houston and the injury situation last week?
Probably 60-40 the Jets more than Houston. I think they caused Houston to fail. They held Stroud down. There were a couple of people. Actually, I shouldn't say a couple of people. I think you yourself, with the wins and everything else, pretty much told me that Stroud was not going to have a good game this past Sunday. I think you talked about the wins and the Jet defense yourself. So basically, the Jets present a problem to opposing quarterbacks. And with Sauce Gardner back there, he himself is only in his 2nd year, but he's playing against a rookie. We have to remember Stroud is still a rookie. He's putting up numbers that are not rookie-like numbers, but he's still a rookie.
Do you have a surprise in your top 5 or bottom 5 teams for the season?
Probably not. Let me look through here. Vegas has trended into the bottom 5 for me. I don't know if they were there for you or not.
They're just outside of it.
Yeah. So I think they've been 6-7 and they've managed to find a new spot for them right now. In the top, I had Dallas at number 2, and I think that might have surprised some people.
I think we'd have the same top 5. I'll bet you we have the same top 5. I don't know how we couldn't.
Yeah, you got to have San Francisco number 1. There's no question about that. So, no, I don't think I have any surprises in the top 5.
Kansas City still in your top 5.
Kansas City is probably tied for 5th or 6th. I have Philly out of my top 5.
What are you doing with Miami?
I have Miami same as a little 1.5 point ahead of KC.
So there, and then you have
That's
Baltimore.
probably the outlier for you.
No surprises.
Yeah. No, it's that middle group that's all.
It doesn't matter what comes after. In my opinion, it doesn't matter what comes after Dallas, San Francisco, Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City at this point, and Buffalo.
Yeah. And if you want to throw in Philly, you could throw in Philly, but yeah, Buffalo's higher than Philly. All those teams you mentioned are higher than Philly.
Oh boy, Philly dropped out of my top 10.
Yeah, I mean they've just survived and now they're not surviving. And it's interesting because we talked about this on either Tuesday or Friday. Now that Dallas and Philly are tied, what are the divisional odds for Philly to win the NFC East?
Well, let's
probably
take a look.
Still going to be 2-1.
You think what?
I still think it's probably going to be 2-1. Plus
I would
minus
think
200.
So. It's higher. It's minus 270.
Yeah. So I may wait a week. I don't know what will happen in Dallas, Buffalo per se right now. Philly, Seattle, very important game for Seattle. It's at home. It's Monday night. Philly's not playing that well. There's a part of me that thinks that Philly could lose to Seattle and still win the division.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, they got the Giants twice coming back, and Philly has a very easy schedule after Seattle.
What about the playoffs? Wow, the Bears have gone down to 14-1. The Bills are minus 115. I'm looking at, what would you make Denver
to make the playoffs?
Yeah.
You have their schedule handy?
Yes, I do. Let's see here.
I got it. At Detroit, home to New England, home to the Chargers, at Vegas. Wow. So they're going to get 2 for sure, which gets them to 9. They probably need to get to 10. So they have to split Detroit. They have to split road games at Detroit and at Vegas, which is possible.
I'm trying to. I don't know how to work this stuff.
Yeah, I would make it at minus money.
It is plus money, that's why I asked. I thought that there was kind of odd.
They may lose some other tiebreakers based on stuff that I don't have in front of me, but I would have made it like minus 120.
Well, it's plus 140.
Okay, I will take a closer look. No live betting in the show for me, but I'll take a closer look.
I looked at all my open bets on Circa for live betting, and they're all live.
Yeah, there's some good ones. That Tennessee one sure looks good, even with the loss, even with the win. I like that one. We got some stuff going on. It's not too bad. I have a random thought, an unusual thought that I posted in the article, but I wanted to share that came up when I was watching last night's game, actually watching football. Bradley Chubb, you know who he is. He's a defensive player, a very good defensive player. He came from Denver. He plays with Miami now. He's a linebacker. He wears jersey number 2 at linebacker.
Oh, and that's confusing some people. Yeah.
So for people watching us live or watching us later, go to the Wager Talk article and you'll see quotes from Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady about the jersey numbers. And Chris, you and I have talked about how scoring is down this year. Have the defenses caught up? Is it quarterback play? There's so many other things. But maybe a small part of it is that you can't key on watch number 2 or watch number 40 or watch number 00 or 99 anymore because they're linebackers in defensive back uniforms and vice versa. And Mahomes had a real struggle with this, and he didn't like it. And Tom Brady called the rule more than bad. He called the rule kind of asinine in terms of with these player jerseys, and it's freaking them out. And these are two of your all-time quarterbacks in the league. What's it doing to Tim Boyle to see jersey number 2 in a linebacker or something like that? I think maybe there's a small correlation, if I'm not crazy, in sack production and what's going on with not being able to identify which guys are going to be rushing the quarterback and which guys are not going to be rushing the quarterback.
Yeah, well, I've seen quotes from active players that it's because if it causes somebody just a nanosecond of hesitation, it's crucial.
Yeah,
I don't think Denver has a shot.
Second reaction when you're playing quarterback. And if you're not worried about number 2 blitzing, and then you find out, wait a second, it's Bradley Chubb who has 8.5 defensive sacks on the year, you've got a problem.
I don't think the Chiefs can lose the division.
Yeah, they split with Denver, and KC has an easy schedule. They still have the rest differential disadvantage, which may not affect wins down the road, but it might affect their ability to cover still. They're going to get teams' best shot. The Vegas had them 14-0, but lost the game. Buffalo had them 14-0 and almost lost the game. The Chiefs, in addition to that, they're not getting off to great starts. And then, like what you said, they're not playing well in the fourth quarter. So they've got to look at themselves and see what they could do better.
They've got very long odds, but Kansas City legitimately has a shot at running the table.
Yeah, it's tough. So contentious in both leagues right now for different reasons. In the AFC, it's you've got a battle for all these teams. 11 teams with winning records in the AFC, 11 teams with losing records in the NFC. Okay, Nick Mullins is a starter for the Vikings. Does that change your analysis?
No, I fully anticipated him starting.
I think it adds a little bit. I don't know the weather condition. I think it adds a little bit of fuel for me liking the over.
Well, I think you're going to see this total jump up.
Did I say there's no live betting? I may have lied. Yeah. Do not take my word as I punch in a couple of numbers here.
Let's bet that sucker.
Yeah. All right. True to form. You got to watch the whole show to get to the live betting, though. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, let's get it done.
Okay. I bet you I moved Bet Online.
Yeah, so 38.5, 39 right now. That's the number that's out there. Yeah. Be interesting to see what happens with the number. Nick Mullins usually does not move the needle.
Oh, he should move the needle. Huge. Just huge. Oh, you took it off the board right after I bet it.
Yeah, I see that.
Ah! I got in there pretty quick. They took it out. I was going to go to that's hilarious. Yeah.
Oh, boy. We keep influencing. It's not me, I think, that influenced the line. It must have been.
Anybody listening could have bet it before I got the bet in. I mean, for gosh sakes.
Yeah, I have to scramble now, but I
No, but
I did place it.
I don't think that affects the side as much. Do you?
No, it wouldn't affect the side. I mean, Cincinnati's vulnerable to the run, and Nick Mullins doesn't actually carry the same ability to run. Oh, everybody's starting to take it off, huh?
Yeah. We're moving the market. We're moving the market.
All right, sir. Well, that might be all I have until Friday.
Okay. Well, thanks for making yourself available.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
It's going down now.
The line?
No, it's really doing a lot of nothing. It just went off the board.
Yeah, I think they're more concerned about the point spread, not the total part.
Probably.
I just have
But
to
I
remember
fully
to set the right
expected this. I feel like it was already baked into the market. I don't think the total was, though.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. Well, very good. Everybody's yelling at me also. So we will, we appreciate everybody for joining our conversation this week. I think we did an okay job of hitting a bunch of topics of value.
Hope so. See everybody Friday. If you make any comments on the YouTube page, we'll be sure to chime in. And there was a request last week, Cris, to make your Discord channel available for people to follow. So maybe put that into YouTube.
Oh, hold on just a second here. It has not been as active lately, but there we go. Talk Dallas and Buffalo on Friday. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good idea. We did stay away from that one.
Yeah, good suggestion. We'll definitely be sure to talk about that one.
Yeah, I find that game very interesting. I mean, but what do you think is going to happen to that line between now and Friday?
Dallas, Buffalo. Are we sitting at 2.5 Buffalo?
1.5, 2.5.
Yeah. There's no way it could go to 3. So I think there'd be slight Dallas action, in my opinion.
So Dallas off the big win in comfortable weather going on the road and the frozen tundra of Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I would say it right now. I don't know if you have a differing opinion.
I just no, I'm just very interested personally. I don't see any jump in the total in our Minnesota Cincinnati. I think maybe they're thinking about going against us.
Yeah, I mean, it may not. The total may not change, but my perception of where the total should be, I feel more comfortable with Mullins if I like the over.
I like Minnesota to score a minimum of 17 points. So if Cincinnati scores, I mean a minimum of 17.
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, that would certainly help the over. If they score less than 17, it's not a good situation for the under. I think Minnesota will be more likely to throw the ball, more likely to commit intercept. Well, I don't know. Dobbs was interception prone too, but I thought they were more run heavy with Dobbs, or they wanted to be more run heavy with Dobbs. I know Jefferson may or may not be in the lineup. I just think the way the game plays out is Cincinnati will do more passing with Browning because Minnie is defending the run a lot. And Madison had a good game last week, but I think he got banged up, if I remember correctly. And he's not a great runner anyway. I just think both teams will be forced to pass.
Mullins hasn't started since 2020. He has 17 career starts. The last I heard was optimism about Jefferson playing, which surprised me.
Yeah, well, the more weapons you have, the better.
So, all right, we're gonna cut it off at this point. I got stuff I got to do.
Talk to you guys later.
Thanks for joining, everybody.